Wait a second, so Heavenly Delusion's best girl is a guy? We should talk about this. Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun, Dai-chan here. My favorite anime of spring 2023 was, without contest, Tengoku Daimakyou, or Heavenly Delusion. That's saying a lot, considering it aired in the same season as Oshinoko, which has taken the fandom by storm. Now, I could gush about Heavenly Delusion from a number of angles. It features a morbid, post-apocalyptic world where carnivorous monsters ravage the ruins of what was once a thriving society. Its protagonists travel this world in search of a mysterious place only vaguely described as heaven. At the exact same time, the anime shows us an equally mysterious research facility occupied by experimental children with unique powers. In something straight out of Promised Neverland, the children have never left the facility, nor have they seen the outside world. In just one season, this anime hooked me like a hungry trout, and I genuinely hope it continues to amaze me and gets the adaptation it deserves. One of the most fascinating aspects of the story is its main character, Kiruko, who's introduced to us as a confident and capable woman wielding a gun that can slay the aforementioned man-eating monsters. She serves as bodyguard to her partner Maru on his quest to find heaven, while herself searching for two different men from her past. Not far into the series, Maru starts to have feelings for her, upon which she reveals that she is, in fact, a boy. The circumstances are complicated though, and that's what I want to discuss in today's video. If you enjoy this content, be sure to like, comment, share, and smash that subscription bell as if it were your waifu. Consider supporting the channel directly by becoming a paid channel member on YouTube or joining our Subscribe Star or Patreon. All three platforms come with the same perks, such as early access, exclusive content, and even some NSFW material that's too spicy for YouTube. Your support allows this channel to cover what it wants without fear of the algorithm. With that said, let's dive in. If perhaps I've already convinced you to check this anime out, I suggest you do so now, as I'll be dropping some important spoilers revealed in Season 1. This is your last chance to drop this video and come back later. Y'all ready? Okay. Well, the truth is, the girl we know as Kiruko used to be, in fact, a boy named Haruki Takehaya. The body he currently occupies belonged to his sister Kiriko. Years prior, he was in his own body, growing up alongside his sister, as well as an older mentor named Robin. Robin taught Haruki how to defend himself in this lawless world filled with crime and street fights. His sister happened to be a talented street racer, but during one of her races, Haruki spotted a man-eater along the route and tried to fight it by himself. This resulted in having most of his body devoured, until Kiriko abandoned the race to save him. His last sight before passing out is of his sister getting shot in the head. Eventually, Haruki wakes up one day in his sister's body. While the hospital staff don't believe him, he reasons that the town's unnamed doctor secretly transplanted his entire brain into his sister's body to prevent both of them from dying. Going forward, I'll be referring to them with female pronouns. This is because, for one, she comfortably allows Maru to refer to her as sis, or sister, not cis as in cisgender. Also, when she has to fill out paperwork on herself, she's confused on what to write, so at the very least, she's not especially resolute one way or the other. She goes by the name Kiruko, which combines the names Haruki and Kiriko. By the time she got out of the hospital, Kiruko's old orphanage had disbanded. With nowhere to return to, she set out to reunite with Robin and confront the doctor who operated on her. Now, I've seen Kiruko listed among various transgender anime characters, and while I don't see a reason to fight that classification, I do feel it's worth noting how special her circumstances are. I feel her design is extremely bold, especially in 2023 with current gender discourse. What do we make of this character, and what are the implications of her surgery? Is she a boy or a girl? These questions are shoved into the limelight when Maru admits that, while he might have found Kiriko attractive, and you would have likely become good friends with Haruki, it's their current state as Kiruko that he's fallen in love with. That in itself raises the question of what it means to love somebody as they change over time. How much does your body or mind have to change before you're considered an entirely different person? Admittedly, the majority of people would probably assert that what makes someone a man or a woman is their biological sex. It's how we've evolved as a species to reproduce and survive, bringing along different physical and mental characteristics between males and females. Then there's gender, the social construct that embodies our various assumptions and expectations of people based on their sex. To clarify further, gender is both a social construct as well as an individual one. We each have our own understanding of what makes someone a boy or a girl, one which we compare and contrast with what we believe is society's view on gender. Some of these beliefs are based in practicality, from a time when humanity struggled to survive. Phrases like, "save the women and children," made sense because, theoretically, a community could repopulate faster with, say, 1 man per 6 women, as opposed to 6 men and 1 woman. Men also have the capacity to be stronger, making them suitable for hunting, gathering, and fighting. Different things that make them expendable, whereas women have the ability to breastfeed children. Perhaps based on those ideas, world cultures have developed all manner of semantic gender roles for people. Things like boys should be stoic and into cars, while girls should be demure, submissive, and interested in fashion. I say semantic because they aren't actually true, especially not in today's world, where technology has taken care of most of our needs. We're not being hunted in the food chain, and tools make up for any potential difference in bodily potential. Furthermore, many places in the world are overpopulated, so the pressure to have children is much lower. This has opened society up to a greater variety of sexualities and forms of expression. It's shined a light on the fact that gender isn't all that important, or accurate for that matter. A tomboy, for instance, is a girl who displays some masculine traits, but that doesn't make her any less of a woman. Claiming that certain traits or behaviors are for men or women respectively doesn't hold up when you clearly see men and women doing just the opposite. I suspect this breaking down of gender roles has created a welcoming space for people to redefine the concepts of men and women entirely. That's how transgender people are able to identify as the opposite gender of their own biological sex. Gender, which used to describe biological differences, can now be used as a general concept of manhood or womanhood that differs from each person and community that considers it. You no longer have to look like a woman to identify as one, and vice versa. To say that Kiruko is trans is to impose a concept of gender onto her that we only get a glimpse of in the anime so far. My first thought is whether she'd be a trans man or a trans woman. Is this an unexpected transition for Haruki, going from a boy to a trans woman? Or would a man being in a woman's body make her a trans man? Again, that depends on the individual and how they identify, which isn't something Kiruko is all that confident about. Oftentimes, you'll hear the phrase that a trans person feels like a boy or girl trapped in the wrong body, like there's something fundamental about them beyond their body that makes them one or the other. It's tricky, because when people say that, they often have no way of actually knowing what it's like to be the opposite sex. In Kiruko's case, she can claim to be comfortable or not in this body by gaining actual, tactile experiences, things which we can only partially replicate in reality at this point. That said, this transition of sorts wasn't requested. Haruki never consented to having his brain transplanted, nor did he show any indication that he wanted to be a girl. This is why Kiruko warns Maru that she's a man, or at least used to be. The dominant factor influencing her thoughts is her lived experience being a guy prior to the surgery. Even if it were something Haruki hadn't really thought of, he identified as male, and you'd expect him to continue doing so even after the surgery. That said, Kiruko's warning to Maru seems less of a proclamation of identity and more of a disclaimer, so that Maru doesn't unknowingly get in over his head. That, and if she were heavily attached to a male identity, she'd likely show signs of dysphoria. In fact, this would be doubly so, given that this isn't even her own body made female, but rather her sister's body. This form already had an identity, and it could easily feel like she doesn't belong in it. These doubts play a role for sure, but wind up taking an interesting turn by the season finale. To an extent, rather than feeling ashamed or weirded out by being in her sister's body, Kiruko expresses relief that, even though Kiriko's brain was lost, parts of her body still have memories. This begs the question, how much of this person we're watching is Haruki and Kiruko respectively? It's typical to think that one's identity is contained within the brain, where our consciousness resides. If someone's decapitated, yet their body still moves, we often think of that as an automated response, rather than a conscious one. In sci-fi like Ghost in the Shell, one's consciousness is so critical that, so long as the brain is intact, or the data stored within that brain survives, a person can keep living no matter how many different bodies that consciousness links with. By that logic, Kiruko and Haruki should be synonymous, as it's Haruki's brain in the pilot seat. In terms of identity, it should be the same Haruki both before and after the brain transplant. But is that actually true? I can't help but wonder if part of Haruki was forever lost when he was separated from his original body. After all, even in Ghost in the Shell, we've got the character Togusa, who's the only member of his unit that hasn't augmented himself with cybernetics. He's reluctant to abandon his human flesh, and Heavenly Delusion seems to be validating his concern. Unfortunately, this comes about in the most tragic way imaginable. Eventually, Kiruko does find Robin again, and he's shocked to learn about the transplant. What Haruki never knew is that Robin used to get intimate with Kiruko, and now that he's seen her body again, he wants more of it, even if Haruki's in there. In fact, Robin takes it a step further, tormenting Haruki by making him experience getting assaulted in his sister's body, forcing Haruki to question who he even is. Naturally, this never would have happened had Haruki remained in his original body. It's a startling reality check for his lived experience as a man colliding with the unique threat that many women face. Mind you, this isn't to dismiss cases of men being assaulted. I'm not holding a competition to prove who's the biggest victim here. While we're discussing this particular scene, I want to address all the people who are so triggered by the big R word that they think the scene is unnecessary and should be removed. Given the topic at hand, I'd argue this scene does a fantastic job at confronting Kiruko's gender head-on without shying away from the subject. You could just as easily, and mistakenly, agree that the anime's violence is unnecessary. Not everything needs a purpose to flesh out a complex world, but in this case, Kiruko's assault is both fitting for the grim dystopia, as well as an important step forward for the character. After all, it's because of her tragedy that she realizes Kiruko's body still has memories of the past. Perhaps you've heard of the concept of phantom touch, or phantom limb. It's a medical observation in which people who have had one or more limbs amputated still feel as if their missing limbs are still there. This is thought of as a sensation caused by the brain trying to communicate with limbs that should be present. It even occurs for people born without certain body parts. This isn't too surprising when you consider the brain remembers, or starts out with the full blueprint for the body. What we're looking at in Heavenly Delusion is the opposite, a reverse phantom touch sensation, where the presence of new body parts stimulate the brain. Unfortunately, this idea of body memory, or cellular memory, is an underdeveloped hypothesis without much to back it up. The most applicable observation of body memory comes from post-traumatic stress disorder, where specific bodily sensations can rekindle existing memories. In the anime's case, it would be Kiruko's body remembering the abuse Robin gave to her. It's not uncommon for one's body and mind to share an intimate link, where thoughts can invoke physical pain, and physical pain can spark traumatic flashbacks. But there's not enough research to imply that a bodily organ could elicit the same response in a completely different brain. Perhaps this only works because Kiruko's newly invoked trauma is extremely similar to what Kiruko felt, giving her the impression that this exact same thing has happened before. The anime shows it as a literal flashback, but in reality, I doubt you could ever experience an actual memory like that. It is, nonetheless, a fascinating idea, and I love how it gives Kiruko comfort, feeling that, in at least some way, she's still connected to her sister, as though she's not completely gone. While I haven't read further in the manga, I suspect Kiruko might treat her surgery as a new beginning, a rebirth where she's no longer Haruki. She is, in fact, living for both siblings as one. This could involve embracing and taking comfort in being a woman. It definitely feels like Maru's interpreting things this way. It might seem like Maru's being rude, essentially saying he only loves Haruki for her female body, but I don't think he's quite that shallow. I'd like to believe Maru senses Kiruko is stepping into a new identity. Either way, it's hella interesting. It's a romantic philosophy that I can't wait to see more of. The last thing I want to bring up is the concept of male and female brains. It's the idea that men and women's brains develop differently, giving each their own unique advantages and behaviors that are independent from socialization. Sometimes research on this topic helps validate gender norms. For example, when studying rhesus monkeys, the males were found to prefer toys with wheels, while females preferred plush toys. Given that the species doesn't teach their children about things like toys, it's thought that their respective preferences come from having differently formed brains. I've also heard of male and female brains being used to explain the dysphoria felt by trans people. Perhaps due to a genetic mutation, a biological female may have developed a brain more similar to a male's, which again literally brings up the idea of a man being trapped in a woman's body. Such people may find themselves more at ease while taking steps toward transition, like hormone therapy. Of course, current gender ideology doesn't require a brain scan for someone to identify as trans, though. It's definitely not the case that every trans person is going to have this phenomenon. As for Heavenly Delusion, it can be fun to consider if there are any character traits Kiruko has that come exclusively from her male brain. From what I've read, though, the differences are mostly negligible. Ultimately, Kiruko is a fantastic character written through a combination of gender ideology and scientific hypotheses. Is she a girl? Is she a boy? Does that even matter? Is she just Haruki in his sister's body, or an entirely new self emerging from the surgery? The anime definitely suggests the latter, but just because the show goes in a certain way, that doesn't necessarily make it right. I'm curious to know what you guys think, specifically regarding Maru and his attraction to her. Do you understand what he means when he says he likes Kiruko for who she is right now, versus who she was before? I look forward to reading your thoughts in the comments below.
Thanks for watching!
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always,
celebrate your fandom!
I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters. Video Gamer 75, Dante Pendragon, Stephen Elak, Samuel Gersten, The Nonchalant Ostrich, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Lord Omagoden, Freebrick, Olympian Doll, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Link Pendrago, Observer Bellis, King Kobo, James Hewitt, Uncanny EXP, Andre Foster, Jared Kraus, Sogai CH, Caitlin P, Vladimir Rovna, Jonathan Padua, The Taz 96, Maxwell's Demon, Kengo X 77, Alistair Bernadotte, SF Giants Fan Mike, and Akakaze Yume. Thank you all so much.